So we're going to talk about what is American Descendants of Slavery. What is ADOS, right? ADOS stands for, as I said, American Descendants of Slavery. That may not sound like something you would expect it to sound like, but it is what it is. That is who we are. And it has two definitions that go with it. Okay, there's the identity, and then there's the movement that come out of all the political and black civic education. So the identity for ADOS, for American Descendants of Slavery, is very unique and specific to people who are the descendants of those who were formerly enslaved in the United States of America. And that's important to understand because we have a unique cultural makeup in terms of the things that we've done and contributed to this country, in terms of the things that we have in our DNA, in terms of everything that has been levied against us and the accrued disadvantage and all the other things that we deal with on a daily basis. When America thinks about black people, they're thinking about ADOS. When we think about black progress, we're thinking about ADOS progress. When we think about black oppression and we think about racial oppression, we're thinking about ADOS because ADOS overwhelmingly makes up that group, and ADOS was the original group because we were here when they started this country, and it was us and the colonizers, essentially. So coming forward to where we are today, in 2020, ADOS is still that same group, but now the black community has become even larger than what we started with. Now we have a lot of our immigrant brothers and sisters who've come in from different areas of the globe to join us, and they have their own identities, and they take pride in their tribes, in their positionality, and where they come from, and that's great. But ADOS was struggling when we went from being the only black group that was labeled African American to now, when you say African American, what's that mean? That could mean anybody black, which is cool, but we need our own identity because that's specific to the policy, that's specific to the plunder, to the damage that has been done. And most importantly, when we talk about everything economically that we have to deal with, those economic numbers are specific to this group of people who came from the descendants of those who were enslaved in this country. So we have to be able to talk about that in a very precise way so people don't get that mixed up with our other brothers and sisters who have a different set of circumstances, although they are just as black as we are in this country. So we don't ever take that away from them. We are at the barbecue with them as much as they're at the barbecue with us. Now, the other thing besides the identity about ADOS is the movement. The movement was born out of a resurgence in proper political engagement and black education around politics. What does that mean? That means understanding that your representatives in the process is what you use to get things done. You have to hold your politicians accountable. You have to ensure that they're doing what the black community asks of them. And we have plenty of institutions and people in power from the civil rights era going forward that are riding on the identity of being black, being ADOS, and they're supposed to be delivering for the black community and for ADOS, but they are not. And that's critical to have people understand that that is what's holding us back in terms of our engagement in the political sphere, where money and wealth is moved around in this country. Everybody knows about DC, but do you all know about Lansing? We all know about Lansing. We know about City Hall right over there, right? See, that's where the landlords, everyone from your landlord all the way up to the CEO of General Motors, they go to those places to get the tax abatements, to get the money, get the laws moved, get all the policy that they need for their companies to operate. And we need policy and money moved for us to operate and be American in this country because we've been cut out and been shut out since the day we came here. Forced immigration. And no one has addressed that in a equitable way. We've been given tokens like that lovely mural over there on Woodward that, power is a power to the people, is I want to say. It's great, I love it. It looks good, but it doesn't deal with what we're dealing with. It does empower, but we still have a lot of stuff to do. So that political education and engagement in black civics that we really need to ingrain into our community are critical to us getting a critical mass that's going to move our policies, protections, and reparations forward. If we don't have that stuff, we're never going to get out of this. And don't accept incrementalism, don't accept piecemeal solutions, and we cannot play whack-a-mole.
Yeah,
and then, right. With all that being said, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve a true black agenda. What is a true black agenda?
ADOS agenda.
It is it's an agenda that includes policies, protections, and reparations. And why is that? Because every law in this country has an intention to be used when they want to use it, and they don't have to use it if they don't want to. Just like the police. The police do not necessarily go out and arrest everybody for the same crime. They don't throw you in the back. They don't put knees on your neck for the same crimes. They pick who they want to plunder against. and they plunder against the bottom caste, and that's what the black community in this country is, specifically ADOS. We have been the bottom caste, and they put us there, and we have to get that foot off our neck, and we have to flip this script. So the black agenda is specific to us. It focuses on giving the resources, the recompense, and the repair to the ADOS community that is necessary, and putting policies into place that protect us and ensure we're economically included going forward. Otherwise, we will never be able to get from underneath this foot, and we will never deal with the racial wealth gap. You cannot deal with the racial wealth gap with things like just education and just buying homes and just owning businesses. That's not enough. Those are just piecemeal things that we see success on outlier numbers. We see success rates like that, like by outliers, people who are here and there, who, you know, make something good, and, you know, all the power to them. We love the black businesses in our community, and we support them where we can. But what happens is, those businesses represent 1 out of 10 that fail. That's 1 that's successful and the other 9 fail. For a black community number compared to the national average, it's ridiculously high. It's stupid high. And that's because we're undercapitalized. That's because we don't have the wealth to actually invest in our business, and we're also discriminated against, so we don't get the SBA loans. We don't get the loans from our family because they ain't got any money. Matter of fact, we're trying to run a business and take care of our family at the same time. So the black agenda is specific to us, and we'll get into the details of that in a second. But, and when we talk about that black agenda, I said protections, right? Protections, protections, protections. Protections for the black agenda focus on ensuring that the ADOS community cannot be harmed repetitively over and over again, but because we are who we are and the accrued disadvantage that we have to deal with on a daily basis. Those are specific laws that put us into a protected class status, because when we get reparations, which we must fight for because there is no other way to close the racial wealth gap, there's no other way to deal with our homeless rate, there's no other way to deal with our education issues, our health disparities, until we're able to be American in this country. And you know, through the racial wealth gap, at the median values, where you're dealing with people who don't even really have money in the white community, they are far and above us. And that shows you that we don't even have access to be an American when the average American has access already. Think about that.
Cut the check.
Cut the check. That's it. Cut the check. Cut the check. Cut the check. So that's specifically in the protections. The policy is the same lane. We got to have things that deal with affirmative action being reallocated to our community, and it's not just a win-for-all for every minority or people of color group. Now, they may have their issues, but that's their issue to take up with the government. It's not our issue to let them have what was meant for us. That's part of the reason why we have baby boomers who have done very well, but now the baby boomers are just the ones taking care of all the Gen X and the millennials, because they had affirmative action that worked for a while, and we can't even get into a company after we got 2 degrees. Reparations now is the answer. And last but not least, we talked about reparations. Why is reparations so important? Like I said, you have to deal with the fact that every day when we talk about being able to be American and our citizenship that MLK fought so tirelessly for, you have to realize that this country has a cost to be present. And when you cannot pay for the amenities of this country or the basic needs for being in this country, you are immediately cast away into the bottom. You have no way out. You can't buy your meal out. You can't buy a car out. You can't buy a house out. You are sitting on the bottom, and that's what Detroit represents. Detroit represents one of the highest murder rates and violent rates in this country because this city is overwhelmingly ADOS. It is not overwhelmingly minority or people of color. It's not overwhelmingly just a Midwest city that just happened to fall because of the big 3. No, it's because it's black. That's the simple, straightforward fact. And when you look at any other metro area that's having issues on this level, you'll find that there's a predominantly high rate of black people if we aren't the majority. And that's how you take away. And that's why segregation was so valuable in the day, that you can put white people here, give them the money, and base it on geography alone, because they were the only ones there. But if you put black people aside, you can base it on the geography alone. So as we know, we talk about infrastructure projects. We got all this investment coming into Detroit, but none of it's hitting the neighborhoods. It's right here on the 7.2, isn't it? And that's what's going on. They're building a new Myers. They claim it's on the east side. That Myers is just outside of downtown, so they can incrementally continue the gentrification into the east side. It's not deep in the east. It's not in the 28. It's not in the 48205. It's not in the red zone. It's not, I know. No, it's not there. They ain't put it where people need that fresh food and produce. They put it where the folks who they just slid in here at higher income levels can get to it and feel comfortable. It was a comfort move. So we do not play that type of game on the local level, and we don't play it on the federal level. And ADOS is overwhelmingly focused on those federal dollars, the federal policy, the federal transformative politics that are going to affect the entire ADOS community across the nation. And we work with local organizations on the local level to help them see that that structure is how you work on the local level as well as the state level, not just federal. So why are we here today? We are here because of a couple things that have been happening already in 2020, right? We got brutality by police just killing people left and right now, black people. We got COVID, disparate health outcomes just out here knocking us out the box left and right. We got anti-black terrorism by private citizens. I'm not even talking about the police anymore. I'm talking about Ahmaud Arbery being run and gunned down by some guys who claim that he stole something from them. Okay, that's some bullshit, as we know. And so the point is, when it comes to that type of situation, you cannot just rely on defunding the police to fix a private citizen. You cannot rely on just defunding the police to deal with situations where we don't have enough money to eat or we can't even go to the hospital. This issue is more broad than that, and we need to understand and help educate the rest of the community that what we need to focus on is the root cause and not just all these symptoms. We'll be playing whack-a-mole for the rest of the century, and we don't have time for that because the wealth gap is growing and we are headed to zero wealth. And not in less than 40 years, we're gonna be 0, 0, 0 if we're not already there. So I really need people to understand that. And the bottom line, and the bottom line is that as a bottom caste, you have no way. Like, think about this, y'all. Think about this. If you go into a different country and they tell you that this group of people over here has a high murder rate amongst themselves, they always catch cancer and they always go into the hospital for something or something else, and they can't afford to have the same type of homes as most people in the country. What do you think that group has been set up for? Failure. How do you think that group got there and it's that many people, make up 14% of the population? How do you think it got there?
Government.
It was structured that way. And it was structured that way. What does that mean? That means that there's a caste system in place. And in this country, the caste system is called the race. It's called the racial caste system. And there's only two races in this country. It's black and white. How do we know that? Because anybody who has come to this country after us has been assimilated to whiteness. They've been allowed full access to the American dream. They've been given affirmative action that was really meant for us, and they've also been allowed to claim white on federal documents. How do we know this? We got tons of information that's already in the public eye, and Census Bureau has acknowledged that a lot of Hispanic, a lot of other groups that were claimed to be, let's say, black or other groups at initial outset when they first came, now are checking the white box with no problem. Here's a good book for people to read, How the Irish Became White. Anybody read that?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great book. And it explains a lot about the same structure that's been applied to every other subgroup that you can think of, racial group, ethnic group that showed up other than us. And that's exactly what's playing out today. And no shade on them being able to have access, but we should have priority because we built this country. This country is ridden on our back and it's still riding on our back. And we created the culture most of this country is riding on today. Everything you think about that's hip is black. Everything you think is white probably is black. Rock music, country music, whatever you want to do. They make sure that they claim it all. So, with that being said, that's why we're here today, to make sure people understand what's a black agenda, what does it look like. It's very specific to us. It's got policies, it's got reparations, and it's got protections for us to ensure we are not continuing to be plundered. And that's why we're out here today. So, I thank every one of you for showing up. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure people see these signs. And we're going to see what's going on downtown, and we're going to make sure they know that ADOS, the American Descendants of Slavery, is only advocating for our community to be healed. And I'll say one other thing. What happens sometimes is people think that we are a group that doesn't care about or wants to cut ourselves away from the rest of the diaspora, rest of the black diaspora. And that's not the case. We're not trying to cut any more than they are already split. The diaspora is made up of many, many tribes of people from many, many countries, both in the West Indies and continental Africa. We are our own tribe, and we have been for a long time now. And that's created because our entire heritage was cut off during the Atlantic slave trade and thrown away. We didn't know who we were from up to down when we got here. And that was on purpose. So you cannot try to tell us that we should be trying to reach back across the pond when we've been here 400 years and created such a rich history in this country. They got entire streets, roads, and all sorts of stuff named after us. And we built this country. We have an identity, and that is descendants of slavery. And that is how we say ADOS. So thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Thank you.